talking about the Army's non-dilutive R&D funding programs, all that money that they put into innovation. I'm a senior advisor for dual use at Grant Engine, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through some of the key pathways that are available, which, if you're interested and you're relevant, then it can enable you to tap into the different programs and the hundreds of millions to billions in R&D funding that are available through the different Army innovation programs. And of course, these programs are going to enable you to be funded as a company, but also retain full ownership of your technology, and may also lead, and this is the point of the programs, to lead to direct access to a very large future customer in the form of the United States Army. I want to just give an overview. We're not going to cover the entire landscape today because there's just not enough time to cover everything that we need to. And honestly, it's a developing reality. There are new programs that emerge, and there are existing ones that have evolved, as well as the older ones that have been around for a long time. And in fact, one of the most potential impactful programs we'll discuss today is the Army Open Solicitation, which just launched a few months ago. So what we'll do is we'll walk you through the major pathways and show you how they fit together and give you a framework so you can navigate the ecosystem effectively. A little bit about us. Like I said, my name is Josh Barone, and I'm from Grant Engine. Grant Engine has a very simple mission where our goal is to save lives through innovation. And the way we do that is by helping lead our clients to a different process of fundraising by winning federal non-dilutive funding. We're headquartered in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, though most of the team is fully remote. And we have a team of 80 PhDs, MBAs, and grants and compliance professionals. And we have a great proven track record. Our win rate is 2 to 4 times better than the national average. And following our recent acquisition of Aquila Consulting, we've combined deep expertise in life sciences that we had before, NIH, BARDA, NSF, ARPA-H, and similar programs, and now combined with strong capabilities in dual use and defense technology funding through the Department of Defense, AFWERX, NASA, Department of Energy, and of course the Army program, which we're going to be talking about today. That combination brings us to today's topic and allows us to talk about the full spectrum of federal innovation funding, specifically as it relates to the United States Army. Now, let's start by understanding the value proposition. The United States Army, like the rest of the Department of War, that's what was formerly called the Department of Defense, invests heavily in innovation in a way that's unique. You see, the Army is both the investor and the interested client. The reason the Army will fund your research and development is because you may be solving a pain point or a challenge at the Army, which is a massive organization with a wide range of needs, from healthcare to data processing, cyber, to drones, AI, to things that go boom. It's facing a lot of different challenges, and it's looking to the private sector to potentially address those challenges. And through the Army R&D programs, you can fund your technology development, build and refine your product with direct customer feedback, and position the Army as your first or your next major customer, all while retaining full ownership and equity in your company. And that's what makes the Army innovation funding so valuable. The Army invests heavily in the private sector. This is nothing new. It's been going on for a long time. If you just look at the Small Business Innovation Research Program, and last year, in 2024, I should say 2 years ago now, the Army SBIR program, which again is only for small businesses, invested nearly $390 million in small businesses. Of course, that's just one program within the Army's innovation ecosystem and relatively a small amount of the R&D budget. The xTech competitions have, which is another program, have delivered $285 million in follow-on contracts, relatively small amount of award amounts that led to significant more in follow-on contracts. And this is a key point. A lot of times, the big prize goes beyond the actual R&D money, and it's what it leads to at the end. The prizes get you in the door, or the awards get you in the door, but the contracts are where the real value lies. And the FUZE portfolio, which is another program which the SBIR and xTech are part of, invests over $750 million annually across the Army's future innovations ecosystem. And these are just a few of the programs. The Army offers multiple routes to potentially get funded as a business, each serving different technology readiness levels, which is where your technology is in the development roadmap, and also where it is from a technological perspective and how it matches the Army's strategic objectives. Understanding this is pretty important. Let me walk you through real quickly the different pathways, and we'll talk about different ones in different levels of depth. But one is xTech competitions. We're going to talk about that first, which are those prize competitions with relatively small awards that help you build your network and lead to more funding. Next is the SBIR and STTR programs, that traditional and highly impactful mechanism, which is reserved for small businesses. It's currently paused and awaiting reauthorization. We'll talk about that also in just a few minutes. Next, number 3 is broad agency announcements, which are open-ended research solicitations from Army different labs, and it's open for businesses of all different sizes and even for academia in some cases. Number 4 are OTAs and CSOs, which are different flexible contract mechanisms for prototypes and also for close to commercial products. Number 5 is this new program, Army Open Solicitation, which is a potential game changer, and it's continuously open for submissions. And number 6 are different specialized programs like Catalyst, RCCTO, TMI, and Mantech, and more, which we'll talk about very briefly, but worth visiting in any event. So let's go into more depth with what is xTech. xTech is the Army's flagship program for competitions. And it's basically a way for them to bring in non-traditional defense businesses. The different programs are focused on different Army priorities, and they can be from AI to autonomy, energy systems, soldier equipment. It's kind of an entry point into the Army innovation ecosystem, where there's a multi-stage process that typically runs for a couple months. But the real value isn't the prize money, it's the credibility, it's the building of the network, and it's a pathway to follow-on contracts. The xTech program has only been running for less than 8 years, but the total prize money itself is not, again, substantial. It's $5,000 to $250,000 given out in different stages of the competition. Usually the finalists will be invited to apply to an SBIR phase 1 or a direct to phase 2, which with a very high likelihood of success, even though it's an open competition, because it's basically built for them. But regardless of how far you make it in the competition, you get the opportunity to meet with Army stakeholders, and this allows you to build your Army network kind of rapidly. And the stats show that it works with $285 million in follow-on contracts from just $29 million in awards. And a lot of companies are submitting to it, so it's definitely challenging. But if you know what you're doing, it's a very good pathway. Let's take a look at the process. It usually starts with a white paper where you submit initial concept and technology overview. And if you advance, you move on to a pitch presentation. Again, each program will be a little bit different, but this is usually how it works. And then you're invited to another stage, which will be semifinals. And then in each stage, you're getting usually a little more money, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000. And the finals and awards where you win the larger prizes, typically around, somewhere between $100,000 to $250,000. But then usually at the end, you're invited to apply for an Army SBIR phase 1 or a phase 2, which is going to range in funding somewhere between $250,000 for phase 1 and up to $2 million for phase 2. Let's take a look at a company and their story. This is just for full clarity. This is not a client of Grand Engine, but Compound Eye is a fantastic company. And they're just a great example of how the xTech pathway works exactly as designed. Compound Eye has really interesting technology, AI-powered intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And in early 2020, they submitted to xTech Search. one of the Army's flagship open topic prize competitions. And they moved forward in the program, were a finalist, and it eventually led to a direct to phase 2 contract, SBIR contract, which was valued at $1.56 million. Okay, so it worked fantastic. But they were able to continue to build their Army network and actually get another direct to phase 2 at valued at $1.7 million. And that network and validation led then to the SBIR Catalyst program, which is the bridge funding between a prototype and a commercial product, where they won an additional $13 million. All in all, they have contracts of over $20 million from the Department of Defense. So this is just seeing the pathway in action. Yeah, it started with a small competition, a small amount of dollars, but through building the Army relationships, by demonstrating technology fit, it was able to unlock substantial follow-on contracts, and it's a pathway that can be replicated and done if you understand what you're doing. So when should you pursue xTech? Usually the sweet spot is between TRL 3 to 6, but that's a question. You can always be positioning your technology as a more mature or a less mature state, depending on where the end game is for the technology. So here, how do you find the opportunities? You're going to go to the xTech's website, xtech.army.mil, and you'll see there are multiple competitions that run throughout the year. Each one has a 30 to 60-day submission window. And you can pursue this while simultaneously pursuing other grant and already contract opportunities from the Army and across the Department of War. So you don't want to wait for one outcome before applying to the other. You want to keep this as an ongoing process. And right now, especially with the SBIR program currently waiting for reauthorization, xTech is a great entry point. So now it brings us to the SBIR program. The SBIR program, or the Small Business Innovation Research Program, this has been historically one of the workhouses for Army non-dilutive funding, specifically money which is earmarked for small businesses. It's a part of a larger SBIR network, which gets somewhere around $4 billion annually. And we mentioned before, but the Army SBIR program in 2024 gave out close to $400 million. So it's a significant amount of money going specifically from the Army to small businesses. The SBIR program is currently on pause because every few years it needs to be reauthorized. And right now, the details on how much budget, the maximum number of awards, and some other details are causing the reauthorization to stall. But when it does, it's a powerhouse for small businesses, which a small business by definition of the SBA is they have less than 500 employees and at least 51% or more of the ownership is in the hands of U.S. Permanent residents or citizens, and the R&D is being done in the United States. SBIR has 3 phases. Phase 1 is your proof of concept, and typically the funding is around $250,000 from the Army. Phase 2 is prototype development. It's typically $1 to $2 million. And phase 3 is the goal of the program, which is when you move from development to production, commercialization and production. And that's where the Army shifts from being funding your R&D to being a customer. There's also an option to go to direct to phase 2 if you're ready to or you're looking for more funding. And not every program will have a direct to phase 2, but a lot of them do. And that enables you just to skip that phase 1 and allow you to get working directly on your prototype with a larger budget. So let's go a little bit deeper on talking about what's going on in SBIR reauthorization. This matters obviously for planning, but the program expired in September of 2025. And what happened was all the new solicitations are frozen, though existing awards continue to act normally. But in the last few weeks, there's been some really positive developments, and it looks like the two battling politicians are on two different sides of how to move forward with the SBIR program are finding some common ground. This is not to be ignored because there's a good chance the SBIR budget is going to actually double. And so we're looking at potentially from $4 billion to $8 or $9 billion annually, but that is yet to unfold. But it's looking like there's going to be a bigger opportunity than it was before, which is fantastic. And so while it's closed and you're waiting for it to reopen, it's a good opportunity to pursue other programs like xTech or the broad agency announcements, which we're just about to talk about, or OTAs, CSOs, and the Army open solicitation. And also to constantly be working on building your Army network. So when these programs, or you find the relevant program for you, you have the right stakeholders for you. There are two grand topics when it comes to Army SBIR or any SBIR programs. Some are more open topic, either within an industry or a totally open topic, which is anything that addresses an Army need. And some of them are very specific. And if you have technology that could be relevant for a specific topic, it's worth pursuing, but so are the open topic. We find the best approach is to pursue both. So when the SBIR reopens, you're going to want to monitor the Army website, armysbir.army.mil, or the DoD website, DoD-SBIR-STTR.mil, and they're going to update the topics as they come out, and that's an opportunity to be on top of them. As soon as they come out, usually there's a pre-release period and then the full release period. And so you'll have an opportunity if you're monitoring it to respond. So now we're going to move into talking about broad agency announcements. But Dan, maybe we'll take a moment here and we'll address poll number 1, if you don't mind. So we'll just take a second opportunity to get your feedback and also to ask you some questions. The question is, how familiar are you with the United States Army's innovation funding process, or the DoD, which we're now the DOW overall? Okay, as seen already, quick responses. We have different levels of about 30 to 35% are very familiar, about 40% are somewhat familiar, and then about 20% I've either never heard of it before, and trying to learn more, or not familiar at all. Okay, so that's good to know, knowing where their audiences are. But we'll have to address that a little later on. So now we get to broad agency announcements. Okay, broad agency announcements. What are they? These are broad agency announcements are called BAAs. These are a different animal entirely from the SBIR program or from xTech. BAAs are typically open-ended R&D solicitations, which are focused on basic and applied research. Unlike the SBIR program, when you respond to a specific topic or even an open topic, you're proving a concept. BAs let you propose your research approach to solve broad Army challenges, either across the board or within a technological area. The award sizes are also larger. They start at around $500,000 to $2 million, but they also can go up to the tens or to the hundreds of millions of dollars. BAs are also, and this is an important distinction, are open to companies with more than 500 employees, unlike the SBIR, which is capped at 500. So even though you might not be eligible for the SBIR program, BAs are a great opportunity. And also, if you're a small business and you would also like to apply for BAAs, you can do so as well. So it's a great opportunity for a large range of companies. There are a lot of different Army BAA programs. One Army organization that posts BAAs and is worth knowing, well, they all are, but one we can signal out is the AAL, or the Army Applications Laboratory. In 2024 alone, the AAL awarded close to $30 million to different innovators. And apparently the companies go on to do well, not just in the DoW, but in the private sector. Their portfolio from all years has raised close to $1.7 billion in follow-on capital, with 22 successful exits. So obviously, these companies are doing something interesting on the technological side, but they're also doing a good job of making an impact in the market. Another major source of BAAs, in addition to the Army Applications Laboratory, is DevCom, and within DevCom, the Army Research Laboratory. Their focus is on disruptive research, typically from early stage of development, technical readiness level of 2 to 5, if that means anything to you, but it's more earlier stage than many other programs. But remember, that technology is based on, the readiness level is based on where your end game is. So you might be a little more advanced, but your next generation technology is earlier. So it might be relevant for you, even if you have product in market. The ARL organizes research around many different core competencies. biological and biotechnology scientists, electromagnetic spectrum sciences, energy sciences, humans in complex systems, mechanical sciences, military information science, quantum, cyber, computational sciences. The list goes on. If your technology aligns with any of these competencies, DevCom ARL BAs are worth monitoring and seeing if you can find something for you. In addition to the ARL, the DevCon has many different centers, and they all have the ability to issue BAAs. So you've got C5 ISR, which is for command, control, communication, cyber, and intelligence. But you also have aviations, propulsion science, ground vehicle systems, chemical biological center, and the list goes on. So each of these centers has its own focus area and issues or can issue broad agencies relevant to their mission. And second, we see even within the DevComs, there are a lot of open BAAs currently. So the key is just understanding which opportunity aligns with your technology and to make sure that you understand the deadlines, the budget, and what aligns with what your aims are. So how can you find the BAAs? Well, you can go to sam.gov, which is the general website, which is a system for award management, and it's kind of the general central repository for all federal contract opportunities. And that's what most of these are. They're federal contracts for research and development, although we popularly call them grants. You should also monitor the individual lab websites directly. So you can go to DevCom and you can see the research funding page, or you can go to the ERDC Works website and others. And they often post pre-solicitation notices, which can provide a little more context beyond what's on sam.gov. Submission windows can be open for years or for just a few months. Like if you look on current BAAs, you'll see ones that are closing in 2027, November 2027. But there are other programs that will only be open for a short window. And so it's important just to monitor it and know, because you're going to need the time to respond on these different programs, because the proposals tend to be pretty intense and pretty long. And these require significant proposal development effort and attention to detail. So we can just look at some of the open current topics. There are 81 current open BAAs from the Army research labs right now. And you can see, this just pulled a few and put them onto the slide. Their Advanced Energy Materials Program. There's Advanced Unmanned Aerial Systems, and skipping over Artificial Intelligence for sparse data, and for massive data sets, cybersecurity, earth materials and processes, microbiology, novel computing, and quantum. So there's a wide range of it, and this is just a few of the many open BAAs currently. So maybe we'll get a chance to do the second poll right here before we talk about another mechanism called OTAs and CSOs. Question is like this: how important is winning non-diluted funding relative to other priorities in your company? Is it mission critical? Is it important and a priority, but not mission critical? Or is it something that you're interested in? So amazing, we got some a massive amount of results already. It seems like most people say it's an important and priority, though nearly a third of you are saying it's mission critical. So this is something you absolutely want to do and need to do. And about 10% of you have possible interest. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll move on with talking about this next mechanism. So the next mechanism we're talking about, now that we've covered xTech, we've covered the SBIR and STTR program, and we've also talked about broad agency announcements. There's additional mechanisms such as OTAs and CSOs. Okay, OTAs are other transaction agreements, and CSOs are commercial solutions openings, but that's just an acronym. There are two flexible contract mechanisms that operate differently from traditional, what's called FAR-based contracts, or the standard kind of slow-played contracts that the Department of War can offer. OTAs are for prototyping and for production work that doesn't follow FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations. They're faster, more flexible, and allow for different IP arrangements. And then there are CSOs. These are for fast evaluation and typically for more advanced technology, closer to commercial product. And the Army wants to see if what you've already built can solve their problem. So they share, though, that they're both are faster than traditional contracting, and both involve less bureaucracy, and both provide pathways to production contracts. So if you need to know when to choose which, then OTAs typically are a little bit earlier stage where you're building a prototype, and CSOs are a little bit more when your product is commercially ready, and you want fast validation and deployment. And on that topic, there is one example of a CSO that we can take a look at is from ERDC. ERDC Works, which is from the Army Engineering Corps, and it's focused on geospatial research laboratory. And they have decided that their areas of interest are 6: mission, command, decision environments, establishing full 3D mapping capabilities, building a holistic geospatial foundation, remote sensing and mapping capabilities, terrain-based positioning and navigation technologies, and Earth system dynamics for situational understanding. And you see that it doesn't go that specific. It's open. It's interested in attracting interesting companies that are relevant here. And this one is due no later than June 30th, 2026. So I mentioned this in the beginning, but there's a new program that is called Army Open Solicitation, and this is a potential game changer. It's too early to tell, but it has all the hints of what, if you're familiar with the Air Force's AFORGE program, what it had when it first started, where it's encouraging a faster and more open mechanism than is typical of the Army. And you get to build it as an OTA or a BAA, depending on what works best for you. So it's very flexible. They launched it in May 2025, and it's continuously open. So there's no clear deadline. You can apply, and you're going to get a response relatively quickly. The idea is to have a solution in weeks, not months or years. And within this, there's 2 different pathways. One is called ACG, and the other is called CFS, or Always Contracting Government. This is for ideas that are not solicited, and there's no deadline. And the other one is calls for solutions. These are Army-issued requests for specific needs, as opposed to fully open. And it's a streamlined request for proposal-like process. So this is worth paying attention to. Again, this program has not been along for very long. It's one of those programs that when it catches on, it could be very, very competitive. But currently, it's still new and people don't know about it. So it's a good opportunity to consider pursuing. What is kind of shared with all of the different programs that we've discussed is in all of them, it serves to have a strong network, a defense network, and specifically in this case with Army Innovation Funding is a strong Army network. We actually put on a webinar a few weeks ago called The Power of Access. We talked about practical approach and tips to go about building a defense network. And we went really into fine detail there, so I won't go into as much detail. If you're interested, after the webinar, reach out to us and we'll be able to send you either a link to the recording or the slides themselves. Another program is FUZE. Now, FUZE we kind of spoke about before because the SBIR and xTech programs are part of FUZE, but they also have 2 other programs. One's called TMI, another's called ManTech. And they put out $750 million annually and engage with over 1,000 different companies, and they have seen that the companies have a huge return on their private capital. TMI is Technology Maturation Initiative, where it basically is there to bridge from prototype to deployment, and it has specific focus areas. So if you're dealing with AI, autonomy, sensors, energy, after you've won an SBIR Phase 2 or xTech program, that's where you're becoming eligible for TMI. ManTech is focused on manufacturing. Same concept here, but again, within the manufacturing community to help you go from prototype to production for more mature developments. And again, like we said, the FUZE program has a very large budget with $750 million annually. Once you've finished your initial development, the Army understands it doesn't mean that you're close to being able to deliver your product. And remember, the reason the Army, as well as all other sub-agencies of the Department of War, Air Force, Navy, SOCOM, you name it. Their interest in the end is for you to deliver what you're developing to them in order to solve the challenges they're facing. And so different programs exist across the Department of War. And with the Army, Catalyst is a fantastic program to help you bridge what's called the innovation valley of death, where you have a prototype, but you're far from commercially ready. And they offer millions of dollars in order to enhance your development and bring it all towards commercialization, where there's a base award of $1 million, but there's an enhancement of an additional $7 million, assuming you can get additional Army SBIR funds, Army Transition Partner funds, technology integrator. Altogether, it's a total potential of an additional $15 million. So it's a fantastic program. And that's specifically for Army awarded companies. On top of that, you have AppFit, which is a DoD-wide bridge funding, which is also helping you to bridge that innovation to value dev, really focused on commercializing that technology. And they also have millions of dollars that they're giving out to companies in order to bridge that gap. There are more programs out there across the Army. There's CRADAs, which is basically a cooperative R&D agreement, typically with an Army laboratory, where there's not necessarily direct funding, but enables you to have access to Army facilities and use their equipment and to use their researchers. There's RCCTO, Rapid Capabilities and Critical Technologies Office, also offering to fast-track acquisitions for high priority needs. And then there's the Defense Innovation Unit. Now, that's a DoD-wide program. However, often they will take Army needs and they'll push them forward with either an OTA or a CSO. And they'll be focused on different technologies. And they offer a faster and easier way to get your company funded and ultimately move on to a contract with the Army. So if we focus on some key principles to help you win Army funding, one is you need to know how to match your technology development level, whether you're closer into an idea stage or to a production stage, and to match it with the different opportunities. You should consider pursuing multiple pathways. Just because you've applied to one program, it's not sit and wait. In the same way that if you're pitching to an investor, you're not going to pitch to one investor, you want to pitch to many. And same thing is true with the customer. So the same principle applies to applying for R&D funding. If you can, you should apply to multiple programs to give you the best chance of winning funding. Let one program lead to another. As we give the example with xTech, it might be a small amount of funding in the beginning, but it can lead, if you're patient, to significant funding in the long term. Phase 2 is not the end. If you are a small business and you're going after an SBIR phase 1 to a phase 2, or if you're a big business and you're going after BAA or one of the other mechanisms like the OTAs and CSOs, you should apply for those programs, and then you shouldn't give up on federal funding. You should consider when you're going to get the next one. And that's true for your current development. You can only get funded for one current development at a time. But if you have multiple different initiatives going on, then you should apply for all of them. And you should potentially get multiple programs or multiple technology developments in different areas of your product development funded. You should match your eligibility and company size. Obviously, small businesses can apply to BAAs, but large businesses cannot apply to SBIRs. And you should always be developing your defense network, because ultimately that's going to be your force multiplier, when you can leverage your understanding of the end user because you've spoken to them directly, and you can also leverage your relationships to hopefully land to more significant contracts. And also, you should consider partnership with primes. Primes, if you're a small business, love to be subcontractors on advanced SBIR projects, and they also sometimes are looking for small businesses with creative technology to be part of their larger prime contracts. There are multiple potential pathways that you could apply to go after Army innovation funding. You could do the typical SBIR to phase 1 to phase 2 with a possible option for catalyst funding, and then a phase 3 contract with the Army. You could start with xTech, build your relationships, get that SBIR phase 2, direct to phase 2 that they're inviting you if you're a finalist. You could go for the Army open solicitation, and then you can make your way into production. You could start with a BAA and then have that go directly afterwards into production. You could go to a commercial first approach where you're already with a commercial product. You go to a CSO, which is looking for that commercial readiness, and then it leads to a contract. You could go to a direct to phase two that would lead to one of the FUZE programs if you're for TMI or for Mantech, and then lead to production. And you could also apply for this new program, the Army Open Solicitation, and you could get funded there, significant funding as an OTA or as a BAA, and that could lead to a contract. So there's a lot of ways you can play this. If you're looking to find the opportunities, you can go to sam.gov, you can go to the Army's SBIR page, you can go to xTech's competition page, you can go to the different BAA websites like Army Applications Lab, Army Research Lab, the RDC Works, that's the Army Engineering website. And if you want to be smart about it, you can just sign up for our newsletter. And when the relevant opportunities come up, they could be relevant fit for you. You'll hear about them from us first. About us for a moment, our approach and how we win, we start with very basically, we have to strategize and plan with the companies based on what your needs are and what you want to commercialize in the long run and where you see this relationship going. A company that is not interested in working with the Army, so Army funding might not be right for them, but maybe Department of Transportation is, or maybe National Science Foundation is. And if you are interested in working with the Army, then we have to also start thinking about how we're going to build out that network. And that connects to step two, is trying to get agency buy-in. There's a lot of ways that you can leverage open communication with technical points of contact of the different solicitations in order to get more eyes on your technology so that you get familiar with it before they even see your proposal. And the last one is putting together a convincing strong narrative for your technology and why it should be relevant to solve the Army's needs. Next steps with us. Listen, Army innovation funding is not going to be right for everybody, but if it is, and you are developing something that could be potentially relevant and a game changer for them, then you should consider it. And you bring the innovation, we'll bring in the understanding and the know-how, and it will help you if it's something that you're considering about a more strategic play for it, is to think about how to strategize and build that network and then to find the relevant opportunities and of course to execute on them. If you have any questions, first of all, you put the questions in the chat and we'll take a few minutes to answer any questions that we have. And also feel free to write to me. My email is josh@grandengine.com. And if you are considering this, it's worthwhile to get on a call and we can talk about it. We'll have an honest conversation and get an understanding of what you're developing, what your relationship is currently with the different federal programs, and whether or not this could be something more substantial for you in long term. And that brings us to the last question. Would you like Grand Engine to reach out to you? If so, what is it about? And what would you like to know about? Let us know, and we'll take any questions you have right now. I'm seeing a lot of, we have a decent amount of interest in small business programs in xTech, as well as BAAs and OTAs. Oh, also a large amount of interest in DARPA, Air Force. Yeah, there are a lot of incredible programs. So do keep in mind today, we only touched on the Army, and that's a portion of what the Department of War is offering in their different sub-agencies. So there's a lot out there. And if you're doing something in the transportation space or in the energy space, there's going to be opportunities outside as well. Do we have any questions in the chat? Oh, we had a question in the beginning. How long did Compound I take on that path for each step? Yeah, I think it was, again, they were not a client of ours. I just used them as a great story because I found an article about them online. I thought it would be great to share with everyone. But Compound I think they started in 2020, and then I think their Catalyst funding was in 2022. Zev, Daniel, do we have any more questions that we want to answer here? I'm just having trouble going through all the chat.
No, I think I've been trying to keep my eyes on things and answer things, but of course, If anyone has any questions that I haven't been able to answer, please feel free to reach out now.
Okay, so Julian asked the question of the questions. When can we expect the SBR to reopen? Right? We should just address that. We don't know. We don't know. It seems like there is an interesting deadline coming up at the end of January, which could be a tell sign whether it's going to be really soon or maybe a little bit more prolonged. But it's too early to know. But pay attention to the different feeds that there's a lot of really interesting people worth tracking on LinkedIn that I really have their nose to the ground on this, and they're worthwhile following. Okay, so I'm gonna put my email in the chat. You can feel free to reach out to me. It's josh@grantengine.com. We also have, it's worth noting, we have a lot of very helpful resources. So if you're interested in learning more about it, we can also share them with you over email. That's pretty much it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.